Hey, this is Steve Good from the Coin Chat.
This is CryptoBeast from the CryptoBeast Show.
And this is Kryptos Chain from the Kryptos Chain YouTube channel.
And we are here today doing a fantastic collaboration. We're going to just get right into what are STOs. Should we even be doing STOs? And let's have some controversy, guys. I'm in for this because I want to debate this. I have my opinions. So let's go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. I'm just going to kick you off straight away just to tell people what STOs are. So they're security token offerings. Look, we've done some research. I know Steve's working with a couple of companies at the moment. A lot of people are saying it's the middle ground between an ICO and an IPO. So an IPO is an initial, what is it again?
Initial public offering.
Initial public offering. So it's more on the financial side. It's more regulated. So this is a step in the right direction. But in my opinion, they're trying to pull it off as this is the safe way of investing in crypto. And I don't buy it. I'll be very upfront with you. I don't buy it. I've looked in the regulations. So there's 3 ways to sort of avoid the SEC and so you can actually run this STO. So there's regulation D, which is what most people do. And it's for accredited investors only. So it's people with $1 million net worth in their bank account. Then there is regulation CF, which is crowdfunding. But you can only, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can only raise 1.07 million per year through this. Is that correct, Steve?
I've never heard of CF before.
Okay, so that's the second regulation. So that's what I read up so far. So it looks like that's the maximum you can raise. So it's way below what ICOs used to raise. Because I'm sure you remember last year and the years before, it's 50 million, 10 million, 70 million. Now it's like only 1. And then there's regulation A+. Steve, can you tell me a little bit about this?
Well, I can't, because I mean, I've been through I've actually been certified by a lawyer in the States. There's a course that's being done by a group to help people to know how to advise. And basically, people are not using A+ as far as registering their companies.
Yeah.
The mainstream is you focus on Reg D, because that's the mainstream way to form a company in the US if you're doing a US STO or forming a company. And then, of course, if you're doing something that's outside of the US, then you might form the Reg S, which is just complementary. But the Reg D is the main structure that forms the company and defines the mechanisms. And then there's even 2 subcomponents that you have to comply with in terms of determining if you're going to do it as a public sale or a private sale, which is interesting.
Yeah, so it's all about the regulation. As you can see, they're using the word regulation.
Correct.
They have like a 1-year lockup at the moment. So they're trying to make it look like it's safer. And it is, like, once again, it's a step in the right direction. It is safer than ICOs, but it's not good enough, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, the honest answer for me is that the whole point of crypto is meant to be crowdfunding.
Yeah. Yes.
And STOs are really focusing on, first and foremost, accredited investors, which immediately limits the number of people and the type of people that can invest to a very restricted amount of people. For U.S. law, you have to have a really big salary or a huge amount of money in the bank, both of which most people don't have if they want to do crowd participation. And, the same rules apply in Singapore and in the UK. They're just different variances of the same problem, that you have to be some form of an accredited investor, which means you have to have proof that you filed taxes for the last few years. You have to have a minimum income for the last few years. And not everyone's going to have that. And just limiting the number of investors overall to a very small number kind of defeats the whole point of crowdfunding, and it turns into a completely different game, which is actually going down the old venture capital path or seed rounds and all this kind of stuff, which to me is going almost a little too far. I mean, I certainly agree we need regulation in crypto, but I mean, is it right to say that we've gone from crowdfunding, anybody can participate, to STO, practically nobody can participate. And my opinion to that is probably that's not the right answer, but it's what complies with the law.
Yeah. Well, it's I know Crypto Chain had some questions for you, but my sort of overview of it is that when ICO started and the whole crypto sort of started booming in regards to investment into new projects, what people need to see is that even if you were a 10-year-old, you were able to buy Bitcoin from someone that invested in this. So that's how unregulated it was. You can buy Bitcoin from somebody you know, invest into this project, make a profit, and sell Bitcoin to that same person you know, making that profit. So now we're moving to direction of regulation. So it's a step in the right direction. I like what I'm seeing. It's creating that trust, but at the same time, it's limiting the opportunities that these companies have. So it's what
it's slowing the process down too, because I mean, how many people want to invest and wait a year, right? Because that's another thing. You got a limited number of investors. You have to wait a period of time. You have to be accredited to get involved. So basically, we're just telling the whole entire like consensus and crowd-based communities, sorry, you can't participate anymore. And I'm not sure that's really the...
Sorry, mate. One last thing. What they all have, Regulation D and CF, is they have a 1-year lockup limit, which is what I think is the best thing about STOs is that it will stop pump and dump schemes. So the companies won't be able.
Yes and no. I mean, the 1 year is that people are locked in after they make their investment. And after that 1 year, then the token can be listed, and then anybody can get in, and anybody can pump and dump. So it doesn't change the problem. It just limits. It just delays the problem because
delays the problem.
I mean, because anybody can be on an exchange and can use a bot, and I don't know how they'll restrict bots in new security exchange. I have no idea how they'll do that. But I mean, the reality is, if you want to pump and dump a coin, you just wait till it gets listed. You jump in there and you pump it. I mean, how is that any different?
As one does, yeah.
Okay, guys.
So anyway, go for it, Kryptos Chain.
So I've actually got 6 questions for you. It's some only for Steve, and some are for Steve and CryptoBeast. So you can take turns. Maybe Steve first, because you're certified in it, and then CryptoBeast after. So one of these questions out of the 6 is mine, but the rest are from the community. So
cool.
Perfect.
Let's start off. So do you think STOs will reach the same hype ICOs had? Steve, if you could please give us your opinion.
Absolutely not. No chance. Because we're limiting the number of people that could participate. If you look at, if any company does an STO and they start with the US, the total global participation is limited down to 1,999 people. Ooh. That's it. And of that, only 299 can be US citizens, and the rest can be from outside the country. So how can that possibly have the same hype or the same involvement at all? It's going to be big money playing around. It'll be hype amongst institutional investors. And all the rest of us will be sitting on the side going, great, but we can't get in. We have to wait a year. And, it'll be like Twitter, right? Oh, it's such a cool product. I wish I could have had shares in this thing in the early days when it was just investors only. And we have to wait and invest when it hits and does IPO. That's the same game we're dealing with here, is we're all going to be waiting around. So the hype will be gone because we're all kind of like, well, we have to wait for the product to work. We have to wait to use it. We have to wait another year before it's even listed on an exchange. Sometimes projects take 3, 4, 5 years before, companies take up to 7 years or sometimes longer before they even go public and go onto the NASDAQ or FTSE or the DAX or whatever. So in crypto, who's to say it's going to be 1 year? It might be 2 or 3 years waiting as well. So, I mean, how is that going to keep the hype? It's going to kill it.
So actually, just one moment. How long does it actually take, more or less, just to extend on this question, to actually apply for the regulation, for the license, before you can start a token sale as an STO?
I have one client, and we started back in May, and it's now January, and we've only just started the sale. And the reason being is you've got to file, because we're dealing with STO, you're not just filing in one country. You have to comply with the laws of every single country where you're going to sell tokens. So if you're going to sell the tokens and you're going to sell them in Singapore, you have to limit it to 50 people. If you're selling in the US, you limit it to 299. During that 1 year lockup where people own tokens in Singapore and they own tokens in the US, the crazy thing is that you can allow people that have purchased tokens to swap with one another, but you have to restrict them to the country where they're from, because you don't want to exceed the 50 investor limit in Singapore or the 299 limit in the US, which means that US people can only trade with other US people. And it creates a very illiquid market, which will be pretty much no trading takes place. But for those who want to get in and out, they could. But you're talking about a very long, protracted period of time, and you're talking about a lot of legal things that have to be done. And even after you're set up legally structured correctly for all the different countries where you're going to sell, the onboarding process, oh my God, it's like you have to first get onto an onboarding platform like Securitize or Polymath or Brightcoin, get set up on there, pay them a lot of money to help you through the process, and they're governing and managing the KYC process, the anti-money laundering process, the accredited investor process, and at the minimum, it's going to take 5 to 7 days to verify a person, and at the outset, it could take a month before the person's even verified, before they can even receive the memorandum documents from the company to even issue them, so you can then look at them and decide if you're going to invest.
Okay,
so talk about going from, oh, here's a white paper, project looks amazing, send a few emails, talk to them on Twitter, I'm getting in, or talk to them on Telegram, have some AMAs, and we're going to go from that to, 2 months before you can actually get one investor to put some money in. Maybe 2 weeks if you're really lucky, but I mean, you're talking about a much more extended period of time of, and to be fair, there's something good about that too, because there's a lot of due diligence that's going on both sides, because we get rid of all the scammers, we get rid of all the crap, but it's gone from one extreme to the other. That's my concern.
Yeah.
So CryptoBeast, thank you very much, Steve. That's actually really good. It's actually a really nice answer, because you've explained the ins and outs as well. So CryptoBeast, what's your opinion on that? Like, what do you think?
Well, I think Steve explained it quite well. All I want to add is what I saw brought in the beginning regarding the regulation, the crowdfunding regulation, is that they're limiting it. So like I said, you can only invest 1.07 million per year. So the amount of people that can be involved in a specific project is much smaller. That meaning there's less hype around projects now, because there's less people talking about it. So your question about, is the hype going to be back in the same sort of level? No way. But just talk maybe straying away from the subject, is the hype going to be back in crypto, in maybe not specifically STOs or ICOs? I think yes, because hype is brought in by percentage profit. Right. I did some research in regards to ICOs and IPOs from 2017, I believe it was, and the average that an IPO investor made was something like 8%, and an ICO investor made like 40%. So, right. and these people, and this was the average. So imagine how many ICOs there were. There were scams and everything, but even the scams were making profit. So it's when the profits start, it's when Bitcoin goes on a bull run, that's when the hype is going to come back, and it's going to hit the ground run. And there might not be STOs, it might be whatever they think of next,
Yeah. So an interesting point for that, actually, for you, Beast, is that when you think about this, right, we're focusing so much on the investor side of it that we almost kind of lose sight of the fact that, is this project legitimate? Because anybody can get lawyers and create a project and show a demo and make it all look real, and it could be as fake as anything else we've ever seen that looks fake. But we haven't done the reverse, which is to verify that these projects, and this was the whole reason we wanted regulation in the first place in crypto, was to stop the scammers, not to stop the investors. But somehow we've gone the other way, which is, and I'm not sure anyone's ever said this before, so I may be the first one actually publicly thinking this out loud, which is, are we not actually putting so much emphasis on the investors that we've forgotten to focus on the projects themselves, which are where the problem lies in the first place, which is we need an anti-scam regulation. We don't need to focus on the AML and the KYC as much, because most people that are out there investing are putting small amounts in that are so low that it wouldn't even fall into the thresholds of AML anyway.
Yeah. Maybe like a specific guideline that each company must follow. This is actually a really good idea for my platform. Maybe I can get companies to sort of follow specific guidelines and tick off boxes saying, yes, we've done this, yes, we have this. And then I can just sort of confirm it and say, yeah, this company is legitimate because of these things that we know. So that's actually a really good point, mate. I like that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you, guys. So for the next question, will STOs be open to anyone in the world? I know, Steve, you kind of mentioned US there as well. So this is, I'm actually looking forward to your answer on this.
Well,
where is the restriction taking place?
The answer is yes, you can do an STO, you know, I mean, pretty much any country, depends on what the country's, you know, regulatory frameworks are, but yeah. I'm not seeing any restrictions in terms of doing it. And you can restrict which countries you accept or don't accept in order to determine how many investors you're going to take in. So the restriction I was pointing out was the US one. And in particular, the reason I focused on that one was because up till now, the US has been restricted from participating in ICOs. You know, every ICO says, you know, not China, not US. So the STO is really something that's been driving for US investors to be able to participate. But the reality is you can still run an STO with
the same thing apply.
No, because if you run an STO out of the UK and you say we're not focused on Reg D and we're not forming a company in the US and we're not doing anything with the US, then you don't follow the US laws. You follow the laws of the countries in which you're registering and operating your STO. You just have to make sure you don't accept US investors.
Right. Okay. So it's the same problem then.
But the problem is still the same about the limited number of investors you can bring in. So if you say I'm running it from the UK and from Singapore, then you have to comply with the laws of those two countries. But you have to do it country by country. So did that answer your question?
No, it did. No, it's basically, it sounds to me like even though they're regulated, they're only regulated in the specific country because they follow the rules in that country. So obviously for US investors, you need to be an accredited investor to even invest in an STO, which is exactly the same problem that we had with ICOs. So it sounds like it doesn't actually make life easier for the US investors.
Well, nothing's changed for US investors because, in fact, if they wanted to, with the ICOs, the problem was they weren't securities. But with the STOs, at least they're falling under the realms of security, so they don't change into the context of how US investors invest, which is this is what they're used to, and it's a fairly common legal framework in which people are comfortable investing that are getting in early to projects. So from that standpoint, that's not really an issue. The bigger issue is the number of restrictions that it places on you about having to control the number of investors you receive on a per country or per regional basis, and that's where it gets a bit messy. And you have to make sure you're just complying with the laws of each country. And if some countries don't have specific laws and you can accept them in, great. But of course, you know, you have to just, it's more messy because you have to deal with all the different countries where you will accept investors and make sure you're not, you know, out of compliance by accepting too many from one place and not enough from another and whatever. So that's where it gets weird and messy. And that's what I don't find very comfortable or comforting. It's just a lot of extra process.
So now this next question is actually really interesting. So how are investors protected with STOs compared to ICOs?
Well, they're under a legal framework, first of all. So it's not like the money's just being handed in. I mean, theoretically, the money should all be received in dollars or fiat currency, and it should be held in escrow because you've got lawyers already involved. So in that respect, everything should be, you know, under very strict legal frameworks and legal, you know, parameters, which you wouldn't get in an ICO where money comes in and hopefully they're honorable enough to return the money on a smart contract. But in this context, you have lawyers involved. So, you know, it goes back to the old, if something goes wrong, everyone's throwing lawsuits at each other. So I think the fear of the law and the fear of going to court is what's going to actually prevent people from doing illegal things or doing a runner, because who the hell wants to have all that hassle on their heads?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
The thing is, if you follow the sort of regulations, you're exempt from the SEC regulations. So you don't need to, you know, it's the same as ICOs. Once again, if you get less than 1 million per year, you're exempt from it. So it looks like the same as ICOs. I really don't. I'm not seeing much of a difference here.
Between ICOs and STOs?
Is what?
Between ICO and STO, you don't see a difference?
Yeah. Well, I do, but it's the regulations that you need to follow. But as long as you follow them, you're not really bound to any sort of legal precautions. Just the same as ICOs. The same as what people did with ICOs. They didn't follow the legal precautions. You can do here. So if there's a lot of laws involved in doing a fundraising event because it's fundraising. So you have to follow all of the regulation and the fintech financial technology rules.
or the legal framework rules around how you do fundraising, first of all. And if you break the law, jail. So already that's one big problem. They're limiting the number of investors. So it's not a crowd fund anymore. It's not consensus anymore. It's not about, community. It's about a select number of, limited number of users. Yes, you're raising money, but you can raise money with 10,000 people, or you can just limit it to 2,000 people. I mean, that's the main thing, but you're falling under very, very strict legal frameworks.
What I'm trying to say is that, let's say I open up a website. I'm a web developer. I open up, I say I'm running an STO. I've raised $500,000 from 100 investors. And that's it. I get the money, I open the projects, and I sell the tokens. Who's going to stop me from doing that? What regulations are there against this?
Well, but that's exactly it. But if you say it's an STO, then you've just broken the law in every country in the world.
So if as soon as you say it's an STO, then you're breaking the law. Is that what you're saying?
Well, to be honest, I mean, in some countries, if you're doing an ICO, you're breaking the law too, because, this goes back to another problem, which is what's the definition of an asset or a security or whatever. And in the US, they have what's called the Howey test, which basically looks at a whole variety of things. I don't understand the Howey test in detail, but the point is, in simple terms, if you invest money into a company and it's tied to the company in any way that's trading and it's an investment in, it's a security. In the UK, they're treating it slightly differently, or they're talking about treating it differently, saying that if the token is not tied to assets, if it's not tied to dividends, if it's not tied to any form of profit from the company, no voting rights in the company, then it's not tied to the company in the same way as a security, where the US would say, oh, no. The money's an investment. The money trades on an exchange. It's security.
Yeah, because a security token promises a profit. A utility token promises a service or utility.
Yeah, but the SEC doesn't view it that way, because as far as they're concerned, if you receive money from somebody to invest into your company, whether you've given them equity or something else, if you're able to then trade that thing like an equity on the stock market, they're treating it as equity, treating it as, even if it's not. And the interesting thing about crypto, and this is where it gets really interesting for me, is we love to have consensus. We like to vote. We like to participate, but we can't have voting rights. So where the UK is going to get interesting is we're saying, hey, if you take these tokens and you don't, vote in the company's bylaws, and you don't have equity and you don't have dividends, that should probably be okay. But then I'm thinking to myself, do they understand what consensus is? Because if the company issues out a bunch of masternodes and a POS model, and those POSs are doing consensus on the coins, does that now suddenly make it become a security? And I don't think anyone's gotten to that level of depth to figure that one out.
I don't think they understand it yet.
No, and even if the community is being asked to vote on something, much the way that the DAO had collapsed, and this would cause the split between ETH and ETC, and that whole event was driven by consensus and consensus rules of all the investment users. So that's a vote. So if you use those voting rules, then I suppose in the UK they'd say, well, your users are voting, and therefore now you fall in the rules of the realms of securities as well. So that's okay. I don't mind some of those restrictions, but we're trying to create an open platform in crypto to move things forward. And I'm not saying that I'm necessarily for the way we're doing it now with ICO, but I think STO is probably rather restrictive and gone too far the other way. That's going to just stop and kill. Because look, the innovation comes from us being able to innovate. And if we have to go spend twice or three times as much money to do an STO, where's the money going to come from? Now we're suddenly limiting the number of people that can actually go start these projects to an extraordinarily small number of people in rich countries only. And how fair can that possibly be?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And are you able to give any kind of prices as to how much a license to apply for regulation with an STO actually costs? So if I want to open a token sale tomorrow, for example, let's say I decide to do it the legal way and I want to open an STO, the first thing I need to do, I guess, is to obviously create the product plan, the roadmap, etc., and then apply for the license, right? So how much will it actually cost me? Is it country dependent? I assume it is, but can you give me an example of a UK maybe?
I mean, what I'll say is this.
Maybe or US, how much would it actually cost me to open one?
Let me put it this way. If you look at ICOs, they were spending anywhere at the low end and scraping by at 100 grand USD.
Yeah.
And at the high end, 250 was a very normal number. 250K USD was a very normal number to spend because they were bringing on advisors, like me, who were actually working for the money, not just taking coins. They were bringing in marketing organizations. They were paying for bounty programs. So 250 was not unusual for ICO.
But that was inflated. That was inflated. Let me just put that out there.
What was inflated?
Those prices were inflated when ICOs were going.
Maybe some of it, but some of it was normal prices actually too, rather than massively discounted. But I mean, even if I sat with a spreadsheet and I've created them, I could come up with a model that would come up with a price of 250K. And it wasn't for the advisors. It was for mostly the marketing, the product development, getting the MVP out the door. There were core things you had to have that took up a lot of time and money. And I mean, yes, there were some overly inflated costs for, crypto-based advertising. But then again, Google and Facebook turned it all off too, but that's not cheap either. So let's just use 250K for the moment as a baseline and then look at what is an STO cost? Anywhere between double and 4 times that. Because you have to pay for lawyers. You have to pay for lawyers. You have to register companies in all these countries, and you have to, or at least in 1 or 2 countries, you have to get the lawyers involved. Lawyers are not cheap. You have to file all sorts of paperwork. You have to have and then you have to go onto these security token platforms and pay them money to issue the whole token and run the whole process for check the KYC, check the AML, check the accredited investor status. And that costs them money. Depending on how many people are flowing through the system will also probably drive the cost somewhat, but it's not all automated. Some of it has to be checked and verified. And then you have to have your lawyers all the way through verifying that you're doing everything properly, you're following the laws, you're not saying things publicly you shouldn't say. So you have a lawyer or 2 or 3 permanently on the team, which in ICO land, you had an advisor lawyer that was there a little bit to make sure that you were compliant and your contracts were done correctly and that your banking was set up properly. But it was light touch. It didn't require heavy amounts of stuff. But because we're getting into this regulated space, everything has to be done super mega professionally, as if you're going to go do an IPO or be like, a company going public, even if you're not. So yes, it's less, but it's not, it's not less than going IPO, but it's still, it's a huge endeavor.
It's
$1 million. I won't even talk to an ICO because I know they won't have the money to do this thing. That means they don't have anything behind them to keep it going in case things drag on, because it's not the problem of setting it up. It's all the things you will run into that are unanticipated that'll cost you more lawyers' fees and this and that and whatever else, and setting up escrow and having bank managers taking care of things and making sure everything is done properly. I mean, it's reality. You want to do it right. So.
Wow, it just sounds like a lot of a headache, to be honest.
It is.
I'm not going to swear for the purposes of our YouTube channels, but F that. It just seems like it's not worth it. Really.
Isn't it easier just to go start up a company and go put it on Kickstarter and say, just put some money in and we'll give you tokens? Oh, but we can't do that.
It's like we said in the beginning of this podcast. The hype isn't the same anymore. So it's the point of paying more if there's less income.
Yeah.
Well,
where is this at?
The difference was, remember, the difference is that you're only targeting accredited investors who have, a minimum of 100 or was it 2? I think it's 200. I forget the number. 200.
1 million net worth. 1 million net worth.
Well, no, it's either 1 million of net worth, or you have to have 200K income yourself, or 300K between you and your wife. So if you and your partner have a $300,000 income, or you alone have, I think it's a $200,000 income, and I'll have to fact check myself on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it is. Then, great, but the point is that because you're dealing with that crowd of people, you're dealing with venture capitalists, you're dealing with hedge funds, you're dealing with angel investors, you're dealing with wealthy people, family offices. So of course they have that money. So it's no big deal for them to put in $500,000 or $1 million for a project. Whereas, let's face it, do you want to spend $250K to receive, $100, $100, and trying to get $100 10,000 times to get, $1 million? Or is it easier to get 2 investors that each put in $50K or $100K or 1,000?
Telegram did, I believe.
Makes sense.
What's that?
It's what Telegram did. They go just private investors. I think they started it off, and then they I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But I don't know if you read their they had the white paper. It looked pretty good. But yeah,
180 pages long. I kind of gave up after page 20.
It's so amazing. They're basically doing like a new visa platform. So they're destroying Visa. It looks incredible. If they could pull it off, those investors they're going to be laughing in the Bahamas soon. So,
well, they raised a lot of money for it, so they better deliver.
Yeah, for real, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think is more complicated, opening an exchange or a nice STO?
Exchange.
STO.
Exchange, yeah. I think exchange. What do you think, Steve?
I think, well, I mean,
cool,
opening an exchange isn't that hard because you can just go and buy an out-of-the-box one and just put it up live. It's not hard to do. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 software packages out there.
The security as well behind it, the firewall.
Yeah, of course. If you're talking about costs, I'd rather put my money into hiring a bunch of security experts and building a proper system, because I've come from a background that you're asking me what I'm more comfortable with. What I'm more comfortable with is building software, because that's where I spent my career. If you're asking me to spend my money on lawyers, I'm not comfortable spending it on lawyers because I don't know how to control their spending, because you give them a task and they won't fix cost anything. I spent my entire life in the career of IT consulting, where we fixed price, we limited the hours, we delivered the work. If the work took more time than what we thought it would take, it was on us. And in the legal profession, it's the other way around. They won't fix price things. They just keep on billing hours. You say, look, I've only got a budget for this, and they keep going, and it's so hard to control. I would not want to be in a place where I'm having to spend money on something that I don't feel comfortable with. So for me, building software is easier because I know what I'm dealing with, and I know how to go and say, hey, company A, B, and C, give me a quote for this, and I'll write the spec out and say, this is what I want you to give me. Can you do it? I'll take the 3 quotes. I'll take the price that's in the middle, or the team that seems to be the best, and then I'll bring in a secondary team that checks the security of everything. Job done. Price, I don't know, 100K, 200K, and I've got my exchange built. See what I mean? So for me, it's about a comfort factor for me more than anything.
Also, I think I thought of your question a little bit differently.
Can STOs and ICOs coexist, though?
Sure. Of course they can. You can do dual token in a project, absolutely, because the security token is being used for the purposes of securing the assets. The utility token can be used to operate the platform. The question is whether you can do dual fundraising of the two at the same time. Theoretically, you can, if you do the STO in certain restricted countries and you do the ICO in other countries where they're less restricted and they're just doing, but you don't mix the two together. You have to keep them absolutely separate.
Right.
But I don't think there's any specific rules that define whether this is okay or not. I think some people would say, shame on you, Steve, for saying this. And other people would say, it's fine. But I've not seen anybody say it's absolutely not okay. I have worked with projects that are using dual token. The utility token is being used for things that are pure utility to run and operate the platform, because the security token is typically being used to pay people something like a dividend or some monthly returns or something like that. It's not the security tokens that I've seen so far aren't being used in any utility way. So the project still, if it's a blockchain project, still needs a utility token. If the project is not a blockchain project that's just going down the STO path, they don't need a utility token. So that's another really interesting fork in the road, as you, I suppose, for crypto purposes. we're forking our own STO. What's that? CryptoBeast?
I've seen the company use 3 tokens, so like utility, security, and private token. So like investment token, like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. I mean, you could have a security token that's for dividends, another one that's for profits, and another token that would be a utility token used for powering the platform. So
that's right. That's exactly what it was.
Because if you have transaction fees and service fees or costs for running the platform or delivery costs or whatever, or voting for things and rewarding people, that kind of stuff, you're not going to give them security tokens for that. You're presumably going to give them utility tokens. So yes, there's absolutely space for both, 100%.
Yeah.
But it's just
now,
like
an interesting.
Go on, you go on.
Sorry. Right. I was just going to say there's an interesting question. Actually, I think the answer is no, but let's see what you guys say. So, will my funds be safe once they're on an exchange, or are they exposed to the same market volatility? To be honest, I don't think that makes a difference, because I mean, once it's on an exchange, it's tradable, right? Will it be tradable in a restricted fashion? Because I think this is where this person tried to get to.
It's a good question, and the answer is we don't really know. because we don't have any security token exchanges out there, and we don't know how the regulators of those countries are actually going to regulate the exchanges. So if you take the one in the US called Backed, which is coming out sometime, in the next 2 months, which will be rather interesting because I don't know of any STOs that have really finished their project. So I'm not sure what the benefit will be to have the exchange out now. But
I'm going to mention one after you finish.
Good. Yeah, I'd like to know about that. But the thing is, there will probably be some sort of restrictions. I would imagine, for example, if a coin moves up and down a certain percentage, they might lock trading on it. Kind of the way like in the stock markets, if you have like flash crashes, if it drops a certain amount within a certain period of time, and CryptoBeast, you'll know about this as a former trader, right? That when you get these kind of hotbeds of really like drops, they'll just close the market and they do a cooling off period. Sometimes it's for 15 minutes, sometimes it's for an hour, and then they'll open up the market. And if the market drops again, they stop the market again. They're like triggers. So they could potentially do exactly the same thing with coins, that pumps and dumps would both be restricted to 5% rise, 10% rise. I mean, you don't see that in the stock market. And there's days where Tesla is up or down a lot and no one's, you could argue it's pump or dump, but I guess because the amount of money in it is so much bigger than what we're used to in the crypto space, that it might just be that we're not certain of how it plays out. So honest answer, no idea how they'll restrict this. I really don't know. It's theoretically possible to still have the pump and dump in the early days. Because if you compare this to, let's say, pink sheets or penny stocks, you could have the same problem there too. So I really don't know how it's going to play out. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Actually, Nash, I don't know if you've heard about them. They used to be called Neon Exchange, but they recently rebranded. There's a lot of hype around them.
ICO.
Did you get the lottery? Did you invest?
Yeah, I won the lottery.
Nice.
I won the 10K one, so I'm putting in that money because it's a really great project in my opinion.
Yeah, it was restricted to 1K, I believe, wasn't it? In the lottery.
No, it was 1K and then 10K for like extra winners with KYC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got pretty lucky there. I think. There was only like 25K people who won.
Yeah. Well, it was $1 at the ICO price, and now it's gone to like 95 cents on an exchange, which I'm going to be talking about after.
Cool.
Well, I'm guessing you guys are probably familiar with this exchange. But so for the next question, are exchanges allowed to list security tokens, or do they need a special license? And here we're talking about Block Trade, which is a centralized exchange that apparently can list them. So I'm guessing that they've got a license, like Steve was saying, based on the country that they're in. And also you've got DEXs like Affiliate, which is a decentralized exchange, it's a DEX, but not really decentralized because it's kind of like hybrid from what we've heard. And apparently they've listed next, right? So you can actually buy it on there if you do KYC, and if you're not from the US. If you're from the US, forget it, you can't. They recently had some legal problems there, obviously with the SEC and all that going on. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that they're probably breaking the law, because most exchanges are pretty outright saying we do not accept security tokens, full stop, and they'll try to do minimal checks.
Yeah.
But in Decentraland, how can you possibly check that? Because it's not really being managed the same way. Maybe the teams are checking it, maybe they're not, maybe they're monitoring it, maybe they're not, but I would sincerely doubt that they've actually complied with regulation.
Yeah, I think they're taking advantage of the fact that in the US it's SEC is starting to regulate things, and in the rest of the world not really, not so much. So they're kind of taking advantage of that, right? Playing the game, I guess, because there are no clear rules.
I don't know which country they're in, because if you were in Switzerland, Germany, the Netherlands, Singapore, the UK, I mean, it wouldn't be pretty if they were discovered and they were in those countries, because it wouldn't be that much different, because it's not legal.
Yeah.
So wait, you were saying is national?
I guess it depends where the servers are as well, isn't it? Where they're registered as a company.
It's where the company's registered and where the people.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, is national an exchange now?
Yeah, on Affiliate.
And is that their first exchange? The only one they're on?
Yeah, they've actually been listed there for quite some time, even before Affiliate shut out US investors. So basically any trader from the US could just go in, log in to the Affiliate wallet, access their NEP5 tokens, deposit Affiliate or a NEO, and then buy with Neo, they could actually buy Nex. Nex is the token, the ticker symbol for Nash. So Nash is going to be the exchange. Nex is the token. So yeah.
All I would say is trade with caution as a trader, because there's a few things to consider. Where the company is formed and where the individuals who are running the company are residents, and also where they're citizens. And all three of those are factors that could, get them into trouble. So if any of them are Americans, for example, that's going to be a problem. If they're not Americans, but they're operating in the UK and they're all from Russia, but they're in the UK, well, then they're going to be under UK law, even though the company might be formed in Estonia. They have to be very careful when you're dealing with securities law to make sure you're compliant with where you're from, where you live, and where the company's formed. Yeah,
on their website, it actually states that they're in Barcelona. So they would be according to the Spanish law, but apparently their servers are on some small island on the Atlantic. I think St. Kitts, if I'm not mistaken.
Amazing.
Well, St. Kitts and Nevis would fall.
So I don't know. I mean, would they have to be registered where their offices are? They could have offices there as well.
Yeah, but St. Kitts and Nevis is part of the UK Commonwealth. So guess what? It falls under the jurisdiction of the British Queen, which means it falls under UK common law as well. So they haven't been that clever about it.
Okay. Right, right.
I mean, these are just realities that if you want to get into that space, then just do your homework. And all the things you're describing are now suddenly not just set up a server, it's now a cost. Can I be in this country? Get a lawyer. Can I live in this country? Get a lawyer. Do I have to do this because I'm in this country and I'm from this place and I'm setting this up in this place? These are just going to be compounded costs for all these different factors, which, as you know, in an ICO, it's not that necessary. It's just, to me, an ICO is like, I'm a startup. And there's something between, hi, I'm an ICO, I'm a startup, to, hey, I'm, a pseudo-listed company following securities laws, therefore I have to be worried about everything. So that's why I say we need a middle ground here. I find that we've gone from one extreme of hype and craziness to the other extreme, which is extreme caution and fear.
Yeah, the thing that really annoyed me is...
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say the thing that really annoyed me is the fact that they've said the CEO has actually declared we're never going to do KYC on any of our customers, any of our traders. You simply log in, start trading on the DEX, and that's it. But they've now implemented a KYC feature. I mean, how safe are your documents with them? What are they going to do with your data if they get shut down, right? Are they going to sell it to somebody for money?
They have to do this for Europe. They have to do this to comply with European law. So whether or not they're keeping your data in safe and secure way is an entirely different problem. We don't know how they're storing it. We don't even know if they're complying with the rules around data retention, because you could be, a user of the system and then stop using it. And actually by law, they're still required to hold the data for usually up to 7 years. So I'll bet you most ICOs that shut down don't even realize they still have to hold the data. They still have data retention laws they have to comply with, which is normal. But, I mean, we're in cowboy territory. Yeah.
The Wild Wild West.
Yeah, it is the Wild West.
Wow, nice. Now, for the last question, actually, this is the funny one that I was telling you about. Which secret Telegram group can the investors join for pump and dump alerts on security tokens?
I'm not involved, so I do.
Well, as I always say on my show, we cannot give any financial advice, and anything that we talk about here is only to inform and help people.
I like it.
And if you find one, just drop it down in the description down, in the comments down below, and we'll check it out. And that's all I can say.
But I'm gonna put it out there. I did a video about this before. They're all scams. So just for people getting involved in this and looking for pump and dump groups, what you need to realize, it's like a lottery. So one person will benefit, 1 or 2 people will benefit, and those 2 people will tell another 2 people, and people will start believing that everyone benefits. Most of you will lose out. Most of you will put your money in, and you will go down before you can actually exchange it back.
Beast is an example.
I don't even think they happen that much anymore.
No.
They used to. Yeah, I don't think they do. But just for anyone who's thinking, just don't even.
As part of my journey in learning and discovery the dark worlds of crypto, I tried to find all the pump and dump projects I could find, and just signed up to a bunch of them in Telegram just to monitor them, because I wanted to see how they worked. And I think they were probably all run by the same person because they really literally followed exactly the same process. They always took you to a website. They always gave you a date and time when the thing was going to happen. And I'll tell you what, I watched a few of them and they were all utter duds. Nothing actually happened. And they had 45,000 people in there. And I was thinking, you know, if I'd participated in this, I would have made nothing. I would have just wasted my time and my energy going and buying a stupid coin and losing money on the transaction fee and probably losing a little bit on it dropping actually rather than going up. So no, they're absolutely not something that we should even be talking about. You're right.
The people who own the Telegram groups, the larger ones, they have a group between them and they organize between them their pump and dumps. So they
but these were all different pump and dumps I was seeing across all these different Telegram groups, but the websites more or less looked identical. I mean, slight tweaks, but you know, the basic structure, format, countdown timer, this is when the pump will occur. We'll tell you an hour before which exchange it's on, blah, 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 blah.
Which it's like, oh, well, or coin.
But even so, this was before KYC. So back then it was like, oh, no big deal. I'll just, you know, sign up to the exchange 5 minutes before and jump in. And of course, nowadays they can't even do that.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, actually, what scammers are doing now, instead of pump and talk about it, actually on Telegram, you've got these OTC groups, right, over the counter. And actually talking about STOs, you could trade next on one of these OTC groups, which is actually a legit group, right? I know the admins, so I know they're legit because they're admins of other neo blockchain projects, right? So these guys are fine. They do the trades. I've done some trades myself with them. And what happens is some people PM you, right? They private message you if they see you're interested. And they pretend to be the admin. What they do is they literally change the username of the admin by
one letter.
I don't know, one letter, or instead of an L, they may put like an I or something, and you don't pay attention. Exactly the same photo, exactly the same details, except it's their address instead of the admin's address. So it's boom, you know, people get scammed like that. And actually, the admins have mentioned it many times.
These STOs should have been they should have had a lock-in period for about a year anyway. So if you're telling me that a coin is trading right now, that's an STO coin, I would say I don't believe it. And the reason being is because they probably don't have accredited investors and they probably didn't have a 1-year lock-in yet. Because who the hell started doing STOs a year ago? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, it's Next I'm talking about, actually. Next is tradable.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they didn't do an STO over a year ago in order to get to the coins on an exchange.
No, it wasn't an STO. It was just an ICO. But what they're doing is they're trying to register as a security. So initially it was an ICO and you've done the lottery, CryptoBeast. But yeah, they're trying to register as so they're kind of converting into an STO because you're going to be receiving dividends if you stake the actual token once their exchange goes live. So you can actually lock it up for 2 years.
Yeah. That's what
and get a 75% per year return on investment. So you get exchange fees. You get 75% of those exchange fees back here.
Pretty good.
So it's pretty good in a way from that point of view. Again, this is not financial advice. It's just, you know, the actual model.
Yeah,
seems pretty cool.
I would just be very careful with that because if the regulators decide to start investigating that one, I haven't looked at it myself, but what you're describing to me just sounds a little bit strange. If you want to convert your project from ICO to STO, fine. But at the point that you convert it, you're moving off the decentralized exchanges, shutting down the coin, creating an entirely new coin, issuing it off to a securities exchange, and that's that. And I know other projects that are planning to do that and are somewhat public about it, but the reality is they're going to convert the coin and then move them or themselves over to a security token exchange, at which point they'll shut down the utility trading and move it completely over to security trading. And I can't imagine how that's going to work because all of us who are token holders are just being transferred across. And I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of legal crap that we have to go through to do it. So,
really, so what you're saying is people
keep on losing it.
People that actually hold Next now, if they can't prove that they've won it through the lottery and they've actually got it from a affiliate, for example, which is a DEX, then it's considered fraud in a way, right? Because they didn't actually win it in a secure way, like in an official way, right?
No, I'm just saying that I don't know what I don't know what the legal structure will be for how they distributed the coins and how they have to reallocate the coins to people. But but first and foremost, they have to have the KYC for all the people that are token holders. So they'll probably require everybody to do a KYC before they can convert the token for those people.
Well, this is actually quite interesting because if this is the case, then anybody who's watching this and holds Next might actually be worried because a lot of people traded it using OTC and obviously the decentralized exchange I was telling you about. So this is actually concerning for a lot of people.
I just think, whenever you have security tokens, you always have to have some form of knowing who you are. I mean, if you go and sign up to E-Trade, right, to just trade stock in the US, for example, then you have to go through an onboarding process of signing up and putting in your passport, putting in your driver's license, or your some form of ID. You have to put in some, utility bills. That's a KYC process. And there should be no difference between that and doing it on backed. It'll be exactly the same for the security tokens. So for them to allow you to trade, you'll have to go through that KYC process. So for a token to register the token, and the traders are going to have to go through KYC too. I cannot see why that wouldn't be the case. So I'm not trying to scaremonger. I'm just saying that's the reality of what security tokens are about, is having that extra level of transparency between the exchange that has a legal obligation to, because it's regulated, and the company that's being regulated and is on that exchange. And that's a three-party relationship between the exchange, the company, and the regulators, and all of the individuals who are participating in that have to comply with whatever the rules and restrictions are.
And what's interesting is they've actually refused to comment. So when asked, right, when Nash was asked, why are you guys listed on Affiliate? If you shouldn't be listed, they refused to comment. And this is actually concerning because this is kind of like people were trading in an illegal way and they were allowed to do so via affiliates. So I don't know.
This is the thing, because they are an exchange themselves. They are a decentralized exchange at the end of the day. What I thought they're going to do is list their own token on their exchange first. Makes sense? Yeah. Why? I need to have a look at this, because this
no, but they don't have. They haven't launched their exchange yet. They're supposed to launch sometime in March.
But you wait for that. Why would you go on another exchange? It just makes no sense. So,
well, guys, I think we actually end up in the whole. We're starting to head into a whole new.
I don't know. Let's see what happens.
We are.
I'm not calling next a scam, by the way, not by any stretch.
No. It's
just saying, always tread with caution when you get involved with anything STO, and make sure you've done extra due diligence yourself before you get involved, because you need to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble by owning something which then a regulator comes to you and says, you hold this security, and you say, I do. What is this thing? And you don't want to end up in trouble, and you don't want to end up in trouble with any. So just be careful and make sure you know what you're investing in. Like always, that's always the advice that we give as investors.
Yeah. Especially in the places where you have to declare. Yeah.
For sure. Well, you should pretty much have to declare any place that has a financial market. So that shouldn't really change. But that's the world of STO, unfortunately.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow. Cool.
Right. Is that all the questions that you had, Kryptos?
Yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much, guys. You've been very
helpful.
You know what? It has been a pleasure. Everyone who's watching, what we're going to do, we're going to leave each other's channels in our descriptions. We all do different types of content, so I strongly suggest subscribe to all of us so you can be as updated as possible.
For sure.
From my side, this has been CryptoBeast.
And this is Steve Good from the Coin Chat.
Thank you very much. You've been very good. I really enjoyed the answers to the questions, and I hope the community will too, and the viewers. And yes, once again, just to remind you, please like the video, please subscribe, and leave a comment below if you have any doubts or questions. Hopefully Steve will be able to answer from the comments, because he's the STO expert. So
I'll certainly do my best, and if I don't know the answers to things, I mean, people can put comments down in the description for any of our channels. We'll cross pollinate the questions to each other to make sure that everyone's feeding the questions through. And I've got contacts in the legal profession that are, STO advisor, lawyer guys. So if there are questions, just send them through, and we'll do our best to get back to people. And we could always do a follow-on episode, just going through all the question and answer sessions as well. I have no problem with that. Or a live one. We could do a live AMA.
Yeah.
So give people a chance to have have to send us little questions and type messages in for us. And I'm all good with that. So no problem.
All right, that's perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, everybody, as well. And we'll see you again soon.